Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to ENG4E Term 2A. I am your instructor, Mike Laverty. Today's date is February 7th, 2023, and we're on class number 2 of Unit 1. Today, we're going to tackle key question number 2. So, the first couple of courses is just kind of getting you into ENG4E. Yesterday, we talked about the course itself. We talked about the course material, looking at the study guide, Unit 1, had a brief talk about our novel, Where the Rivers Meet. So now I'm going to get into the key questions and give you some strategies to answer them and give you like a general mindset. So today we're going to focus a lot on writing. So this is a very writing heavy course. So I really want you to pay attention to this course, this lecture particularly, because it'll give you lots of tips and strategies for becoming a stronger writer and telling your own story. And so with that in mind, let's jump right in. So as I mentioned yesterday, I'll do announcements every class, and some of them will be a bit longer than others. This is the same as yesterday, but really important information to keep in mind. We are on week 1 of classes in term 2A. This is a 9-week course. So this is the first week. We'll take a break for March break, so there's no classes from March 13th to the 16th. But those 9 weeks don't include that week. So we do about 4 weeks. I think, let me just look at my calendar. We will do, yeah. So we're on week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll do weeks 1 through 5, do March break, and then come back for weeks 6, 7, 8, and 9 to finish off this course. And there's no class on Monday, February 20th, because that is Family Day. So, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm hoping that we can do a unit every 2 weeks. So we'll be looking at Unit 1 this week and next week. It might go into week 3. I don't know. It takes me a bit longer to go through the first unit because there's lots of background information I want to give you. And then by the time we get rolling into weeks 2 and 3, there's less assignments to cover. And you as a student are more aware of what's happening. You're becoming a little bit stronger. You got that background information. I don't have to explain as much, but on the first couple of weeks for sure, there's lots of background information I try to give you to help you become prepared for the course and for what's to come. So hopefully by the time we get to week 9, we've wrapped up units 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you have a solid week where I can prepare you for your final exam. And I mentioned this yesterday, but it's important to repeat it again, that you will write a final exam, or you'll do a what's called a course culminating final activity, right? So hopefully you can write the exam, but the exam does take some preparation, and somebody has to be in the room with you while you write it. So more on that as we come, but it's good to have a roadmap and to see where you're going. So we do broadcast live every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 2 to 2:55 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we're moving into a new studio. So as I'm right now, you can see behind me, I'm in the background. I'm in the basement of the studio. I'm in the dungeon. So hopefully by next week, I'll be in a brand new studio and I'll be able to broadcast on the radio. And you can phone into the studio. Right now, our phone lines are down, and you can watch or listen on Bell ExpressVu. But for now, the time being, if you want to participate live, if you want to listen or watch live and ask questions and participate in the chorus, which is what I would really love to see happen, then you can go on that Zoom link at the bottom of the screen right there. So you can click on that. So then that's the meeting ID. That's my meeting ID, 417-6699-799. So if you put that in, or just type in that whole URL, you will find my class. If you search for Labradiwasa, you'll find me on YouTube. And what I've done is I've created a playlist. So if you look at my playlist, you'll see ENG4E. You'll see there'll actually be two playlists. So ENG4E, Unit 2A, which is every chorus that I'll teach in this term. And then UNG4E Unit 1. So all of the Unit 1 courses will be divided into a separate playlist. So you can watch them all or just focus on a specific unit. And as we get into units 1, 2, 3, and 4, each one will be given its own playlist. And then at the end, the final exam will have its own playlist. So just trying to make it easier for you to find what you need. So once again, it's really important to start getting work in as soon as possible. And I strongly encourage you to send in just small batches of assignments, like, you know, as low as 1, and, you know, don't go past 10, you know, like if you can. Like I really appreciate it if you just give me 4 or 5 assignments at a time. And that's the way I operate the best. And I think it's better for you to get feedback on what you're doing, right? So it's, especially for the longer, like, writing assignments, you don't want to hand in like several writing assignments and then be doing the same kind of mistakes or whatever over and over again. So writers and readers and people of all kinds of like artistic, you know, expressions, you know, dancers, painters, or athletes, hockey players, or any kind of workplace environment, we all have patterns and we all do things a certain way. And you need somebody to comment on your patterns and the way you do things, right? So like, have you ever noticed you keep doing this? Maybe you should change that, and maybe you should try this. And I mentioned this yesterday, it's not always negative, and it should be positive too. You know, any good boss, any good leader, or any good teacher for that matter, should be pointing out your strengths and your weaknesses, right? That's what they're there for. They're not there to just simply criticize you and show you your mistakes. They're there to show you what you're doing well, what you can improve upon, and, you know, what you're not doing well, what the areas that are kind of holding you back. And I think that's what a good friend does too, a good mentor, right? They you know, they say, you know what, I'm not perfect either, but hey, you might want to work on this. You might want to do this a bit differently, right? And so I know myself, speaking from experience, it's kind of hard to be criticized, and it's hard to have someone look at your writing, especially if you put a lot of time into it and a lot of thought into it. And if that writing is very personal, or you're talking about your family or someone who means the world to you, and then somebody just marks up your whole thing and scratches out words and tells you what to do differently, it's kind of hard to hear that. But just know that when it comes from me, it's coming from a good place. And I want all my students to become better writers, and to find their voice, and to become stronger readers and better communicators, and to, you know, truly be ready for like the next step in their life, and to see these skills as something that's going to make your life better. You know, it's not just some checklist on your way to getting a diploma. It's a real skill that you can pick up. So there's many ways on the screen that you see there to submit your work. So talk to your DEC. If you want to do it yourself, then email it to that studentwork@nnec.on.ca, and my email address, mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Fax the fax number on the screen. And I suggest getting the Adobe Scan app. So get that app on your phone, and it's a great one. If you got a phone or a tablet, it's a great way to capture your work and send it to me either through email or Facebook Messenger. Any questions you have, any feedback on the course, I love to get feedback. So I'm not perfect either, as much as I'd like to believe it. I need someone to criticize me and tell me what I could do differently. So I'd love to get some feedback from students. So feedback on the course, any questions about the class, today's class, the course in general, any specific questions you have about an assignment, please send them my way. I would love to read them and answer them. So email me on that email address provided. Hit me up on Facebook Messenger. That's Liberty Wassa. I won't be offended if you don't want to add me as a friend on Facebook. I might get a little bit sad. No, I'm just kidding. I won't, but if you want, we can just communicate through Messenger. If you add me as a friend on Facebook, then you will get some posts from me, but they're all professional posts. That is my professional. I do have a regular Facebook page, but that's my professional account. That's my work account, and I only post things about the course. And you can phone me at that number, the top one, 807-737-1488. Extension 2211 is my main line. If you get the receptionist, just ask for Mike. And the 1-800-667-3703 number is our free long distance number. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that's when you want to get in touch with me. That's when I am the most active. And here's where you should be with the course so far. So just not many expectations on day 2, but I do expect you to contact me and reach out if you haven't already done so. Reach out to me through email, through Facebook, through Messenger. Oh, excuse me. I don't usually do this, but this room makes me feel tired, so I'm trying to keep the energy up. Phoning or texting. I'd like you to read the study guide and read through Unit 1 of ENG4E. So that's your homework for now. Just get those 3 things out of the way. So here is today's lesson. We will look at some images of the day, some words of the day. We're going to talk about subject and verb agreement, and we're going to talk about the writing process. And we're going to talk about the writing process so you can work on key question 2, paragraph development. So our learning goals for today are to define subject and verb agreement. So what does that mean? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to define that term, and then we're going to learn about the writing process and what that writing process really means. You'll be successful if you simply take notes on subject and verb agreement. So just take notes on that. Make sure you check your understanding. Make sure you really know make sure you know what a subject is. Make sure you know what a verb is. And more importantly, make sure you know what it means to have them agree with each other. They can't disagree with each other. They got to be best friends. They got to be on the same page. So what does that really mean? And you'll be successful if you practice the writing process to generate ideas for key question 2. So I'm going to talk a lot about that as we go through the course. We're going to talk a lot about the process of just generating ideas. So it's a really important part of being a writer and a reader and a student of English, right? You need to learn how to generate ideas. And then you need to learn what to do with those ideas. But step 1, you got to be good at just coming up with ideas. And you have to have strategies and tools and tips and just ways and methods that you can use to generate ideas. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on today. So I love political cartoons. I grew up on the Far Side. I read a lot of Far Side comics as a kid. I really loved it. I even wrote the author of the Far Side, that's Gary Larson. I wrote him a letter, told him how awesome his comics were. So these aren't Far Side, but they're kind of similar, 1-panel comics. So the first one over here is Bilbo Baggins. This is Gollum from the Lord of the Rings books and movies, and he goes, "We hates the Baggins," and his English teacher says, "We hate the Baggins." Subject being we and the verb being hate, so she's correcting his grammar. The robbers drives away quickly. and the little student says, forget about subject verb agreement. Did anyone get the license plate? So robbers is the subject, drives is the verb. Robbers and drives are not in agreement. It should read, the robbers drive away quickly. And the third panel says, sorry to interrupt, but you've got subject verb disagreement in the third stanza. So you got this band playing, and the guys in the studio who are mixing it are noticing that the singer has a subject verb disagreement. So the joke there being that they're a bunch of rock stars and they don't care about grammar, but the studio engineer is not going to let that slide. Okay, so that's the joke there. In the first two examples, we have actual examples of a subject verb disagreement. And more on that in a second as we explain that. So before we do that, I want to just briefly touch upon those 9 units of speech. They're very important to keep in mind as we move through the course. So remember nouns. A noun is a part of speech that names a person, place, or thing. Teachers to look out, happiness. We've got verb, which are action words, which, you know, there's in a sentence, there are nouns, and in a sentence, there are verbs. So that those are the 2 most basic components in the English language. There's things that happen there's things that happen in a sentence. Sorry, there's things that occur in a sentence, and then, you know, things happen to them and they do things, right? So we're, as writers, we write about ideas and we write about things, but our writing comes alive through verbs. So the verbs come alive when we say what happens to them. Sorry, the nouns come alive when we say what happens to them, you know, and things happen to them and they do things. Pronouns are special nouns, and they take the place of nouns. So I, he, she, it, they, their are all examples of pronouns. So Mike Laverty is a teacher at WASA. He teaches English. Adverbs tell us how an action is done. Adjectives tell us things about a noun. They describe that noun. So, you know, usually, you know, in writing, it's you talk about a teacher, or you talk about a painting, or you talk about a restaurant, or you talk about a shirt or a pair of shoes, right? So if I tell you right now, visualize a pair of shoes, right? So what do you visualize? Okay. Now, if I say visualize red shoes, you're like, okay. Visualize red dress shoes, right? Or visualize red basketball shoes. Okay. Visualize beat up red basketball shoes, right? Visualize beat up red basketball shoes on a basketball player who is running awkwardly, right? So you just build up layers upon layers of meaning, right? So if you want your reader to visualize something in their head, you got to be descriptive. And adverbs and adjectives are the modifiers we use to modify nouns and verbs. And they just give us a more focused and detailed description of what's happening. Article, the best way to define it is article is 3 words, a, an, and the. That's all you need to know. If you see a, an, or the, it's an article. They're usually used before nouns, like a walk in the park, you know, an anthill, right? The way back home, right? That's the way that works. Conjunctions are words that join words or groups of words together, and, but, yet. There's the fanboys acronym, that's for, and, nor, but, to, or sorry, fanboys, but, or yet. So there are conjunctions, like I wanted to go to the movies, but I was broke. The test was really hard, yet many students did great, you know? I'm going to Winnipeg, and I'm going to visit the MTS Center when I'm there, right? A preposition shows relationships between nouns and pronouns to other words. So from, in, beside, on, under, over. So it also tells us like when something happened, like during, while, right? So they tell us when something happened, where it happened, and interjections are words or phrases used to show strong emotion, like wow, hey, or ow, things like that. Also have some words of the day. So ikidoen is a Anishinaabe-Moan noun for a speech, a word. It could also be a verb for speaking. Ojibijan is a verb, which is write it down, jot it down, sign it. So just keep in mind that I don't speak this language. I just like to make comparisons with it to English. If I don't pronounce something the right way, please let me know about it right now in the comments on Zoom or whatever. Just let me know. I would love to hear. Some English words to keep in mind. Word is a single distinct meaningful element of speech or writing used with others or alone to form a sentence, right? So words are the building blocks of sentences. And, you know, we build up many words to make a sentence, but it's the single most distinct, meaningful element of speech, right? Where, you know, words are made up of sounds and letters. And so on their own, they don't really have meaning. But words are like the most essential pieces of language that have meaning, right? Speech is the expression of or the ability to express thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds. So speech is technically talking, it's speaking, right? So when we say the 9 parts of speech, we're also talking about the 9 parts of writing as well, right? So but speech often just stands in place for just communicating thoughts in general, right? And so when we communicate, we have our 9 parts of speech. All right. So I want to get into a little bit about sentence structure. So how we build up sentences, how we craft them, right? So I think that writing is a craft, and when you write something, you build it, and you build it with different pieces, right? And so you have to know what the different pieces are, and to know how they go together, right? So you have to understand the 9 parts of speech. You have to understand what a noun is, what a verb is, what an adjective is. So you need to know those things so you can build them together. But then groups of words also function. So, you know, words make up sentences, but words also make up clauses and subjects and predicates. So there's all kinds of ways that we can talk about sentences and break them down. So every sentence has a subject. I would say most, right? Remember yesterday we talked about go. So the word go is technically a complete sentence, but most sentences have more than one word, and they typically will have a subject and a predicate. So I would say that this is most sentences, right? The overwhelming majority of sentences you're going to read and write are going to have a subject and a predicate. But what are those things? So the subject is the person, place, or thing the sentence is about. So if you notice, that's kind of like the definition for a noun, right? So every sentence is going to have a noun that is the subject. So every sentence is going to be about something, right? So, and then you can figure out what that thing is, right? So we'll talk about objects in a later class. So the subject is what the sentence is about, and an object would be something that is done by the subject or something that's done to them. So like the boy kicked the ball. The boy is the subject and the ball is the object, right? The object is something that's the boy is acting upon, right? So just keep that in mind. So that the subject is what the subject is really about, you know, like most importantly. A sentence can be about many things, but there's going to be one thing that stands above the rest. Now, the predicate is what is said about the subject. A predicate includes a verb, right? So that's really important. So the subject must agree with the predicate or the verb. So subject verb agreement, subject predicate agreement, it's kind of the same thing. So, but they have to agree with each other. And more on that in a second. So let's have a look at this sentence. Indigenous, this is from a article that I did for a different course. Indigenous organization celebrates grand opening of multiple services and health center. So what is the subject of the sentence? What is this sentence really about primarily? Right? What's the main subject, right? You almost want to think like, who's the main character, right? You know, what's the focus, right? And everything else in the sentence is sort of like telling us more about the subject, right? So, and then what is the predicate? What is said about the subject? So just think about that for a few seconds. All right, so I've highlighted the subject in blue. So Indigenous organization, that's the subject, that's the main character. That's what this sentence is really about. It's about this Indigenous organization. And then moving right along, the predicate is what is said about them. And the predicate usually starts with a verb. In this case, celebrates. So Indigenous organization celebrates grand opening of multiple services and healthcare. Okay, so the subject is Indigenous organization and the predicate is celebrates grand opening of multiple services and healthcare center. So let's talk about subject verb agreement. Okay, so here's a sentence. We are going to the movies tonight. That's correct. Incorrect would be we is going to the movies tonight. So usually when the subject and the verb don't sound right, if something sounds off, that's usually because there's subject verb disagreement. So the word we is the subject of the sentence. So the subject is we, the predicate is are going to the movies. This word is plural as it refers to more than one person. So that's really what it comes down to, right? You have plural subjects and singular subjects. And so the verb are is used for plural subjects. And we use the verb is for singular subjects, right? So we is going to the movies is incorrect technically because the subject and the verb, they don't agree. So another example would be Henry is going to the movies tonight, and Henry are going to the movies tonight. So Henry is the subject of the sentence, and Henry is a singular word because Henry refers to one person. So we use the verb is for singular, and we use the verb are for plural. So Henry is going to the movie. And it's a bit different if you use like a singular pronoun like I. You wouldn't say I is going to the movie, you say I am going to the movies, right? So it depends. So if your subject is a pronoun, there's going to be different rules. But if it's a plural pronoun, it's going to be they are going to the movies. The two sisters are going to the movies, right? My sister is going to the movies, right? It's one. And usually if the you know, like it's, and then if we go back to our initial example here, Indigenous organization is a singular verb. It gets a plural verb, right? So celebrates, right? So you could say, you know, like many organizations celebrate, right? but one celebrates. So hopefully that's clear, right? So so we have singular and plural subjects, and then the verb form is going to match up with that, right? So it's just all about matching it together, right? So we and sometimes it doesn't change, you know, like I ran a marathon, we ran a marathon, right? There is no rans, right? There's just but so you just really have to say it out loud and know the difference. And this is what makes English so hard to teach someone if they haven't learned it. But this is the best way for you to do this. And then when you answer the questions later on in the course about making your subject and verb agree with each other, if you just say it out loud, you should pick up the mistake. And if you don't, just try to think about the plural and the singular and try to say it both ways, right? So, you know, every verb will have different versions of it, right? So, and then you can always look it up on dictionary.com too, right? And it'll show you all of the versions that verb has, right? So, and then you can kind of figure it out that way. So, but that is what we mean by our subject and our verb agreeing with each other. All right, so I'd like to spend some time here talking about key question number 2. Just give me 1 sec. I just want to make sure I've got what I need with me. All right. So key question number 2 is talking about paragraph development, and it is worth 10 marks. So a lot of your courses in ENG4E are going to be writing courses. So I want to spend, you know, a good 20-25 minutes here, well, 23, talking about the writing process and really delving into that and finding out, you know, how we can become better writers and having a strategy that we can use to tackle any writing project, right? So we're going to talk about the writing process. But before we do that, I just want to give you the assignment, and then I'll give you some strategies for writing it. So if you look in Unit 1, key question number 2 is called paragraph development. And this is your assignment. You must write an expository paragraph, at least 7 sentences, that shows a good understanding of subject-verb agreement. So that's the main task. So you've got to write a paragraph. It's got to be at least 7 sentences long. It's got to show good subject-verb agreement, and it's got to be an expository paragraph. So you might be asking yourself, what does that word mean, expository? I'll explain that in a second, but here are some things to keep in mind, okay? You will decide the topic of the paragraph, right? So the topic is up to you. The form of the paragraph is not up to you. So the form of the paragraph is expository. So that's a very specific kind of writing. But you get to pick the topic. It can be about whatever you want as long as it fits that form. Your paragraph needs to be at least 7 sentences long. You must demonstrate understanding of subject-verb agreement. You should also demonstrate your understanding of modifiers. So being descriptive, using adjectives, using adverbs. It will be necessary to write a rough draft of your paragraph and do some possible editing before producing a final copy. So that's important that you do that. You write down the rough copy before you delve into the good copy. You'll only submit the one version, but I strongly recommend that you do this, okay? And then if you want, you can include that that rough copy. I would love to see it. You don't have to, but it would be great for you to submit your rough copy, and then I can see where you're coming from. And that just shows me that you've embraced the writing process, right? So So, but you'll have to write the rough copy and then edit it later and then produce a final copy. And that final copy can be a printout from a computer, or it can just be a written example. So it can just be, you just simply write it out again, but just make it better, right? And that's the foundation of the writing process, is that we work through many drafts, we put rough ideas on the page, and then we make them stronger. So some examples, so expository writing. So expository writing is really about explaining stuff. So it can be a description of something. You could just simply be describing what something looks like, smells like, tastes like, right? It could be a process, it could be a how-to article, how to do something. It could be a comparison, comparing two different things. It could be a cause and effect article, describing how something caused something to happen. It could be a problem and a solution, right? So it could be, you know, having a problem, and then that's similar to a how-to, right? Usually a how-to article, it's you would typically read a how-to article because you've got a problem, you don't know how to do something, and reading the article should, if it's written well enough, should explain to you how to do that thing. Now, and then the purpose is to educate or inform your reader, right? So that's the purpose, right? So you're explaining something, you're describing it, you are comparing two different things. So there's many different strategies here you can take, right? So I unfortunately don't have my smartboard working at the moment, so I can't jot things down the way I would love to do it, but we can just simply talk about them. So when you describe something, you can describe, you know, what your dog looks like. You can describe what your house looks like. You can give a description of your favorite thing in the world. It's sort of like what you'd see like in a catalog, or like it's just a description of something. Just tell me what something looks like, what it smells like. If you can incorporate multiple senses, that might, you know, that might help. You know, what is tell me what your home community looks like. Describe your home community. Describe, you know, describe your family. Describe anything you can describe in 7 sentences, right? So you want to have something that you can elaborate upon using lots of different details, okay? A how-to article, right? So think of something that you know how to do that you can share with somebody else. And if you look at the if we look at our unit assignment there, they bring up a couple of examples, like how to build an emergency shelter in the bush, how to set a net for fish during a certain time of the year. So things like that. So that you could do that. So a how-to article, something that you know how to do and you can teach somebody else. Other examples of expository writing include a comparison. So maybe you could look at 2 different products and compare them, compare 2 different movies, compare 2 different TV shows, compare, you know, anything, right? Just pick 2 things. You might pick 3 or 4, but it's better if you can just stick to 2. So pick 2 things and compare them. 2 different memories you had, 2 different trips you took, 2 different jobs you had. So cause and effect is just, this is sort of like a before and an after, you know, something that happened and then the effect of that thing happening. So something that happened in your life, something that happened in your community's life, something that happened to somebody, you know, just, it's basically, you know, it's storytelling in a way, right? It's like something happened, and because that thing happened, these other things happened, right? That's really all you're doing, right? That's what cause and effect is all about. So, and then problem and solution. So you're describing, explaining a problem you had and how you solved it, or hypothetically, like how to solve this problem, right? And that it could be very similar to a how-to article, right? So you got many ways to approach this thing. All right. So when we're talking about the writing process, the writing process is it's a 5-step process. Okay. So step 1, we do planning. Step 2, we write. Step 3, we revise. Step 4, we edit. And step 5, we publish. And then all of the steps can kind of, you can do the steps in different orders, right? So you can just jump into writing for a bit and just write a bunch of random stuff, and then go back and do some planning, and then you can revise, you can edit, right? So it's not like you just do step 1 and then you're completely done with step 1 and you go into step 2. Step 5 is the last one, and once you've done step 5, once you've published, then you're done. But until you get to step 5, you can always go back to one of the previous steps and jump up and down and go between them. But step 1 is where we usually start, and step 1 is where I recommend that you start for this assignment and for any assignment you do in this course. I really believe you should do some form of planning before you jump into your assignment. So step 1, I want you to choose the type of expository writing you're going to do for your paragraph. So you're going to do a description, a how-to, a comparison, a cause and effect, a problem or solution, and try to come up with at least 3 more, if you can, general topics you can write about. For example, how to cut down a tree or my dog, a description, right? Pick your favorite one. So write down a list of things you can talk about and then pick your favorite one. Step 2 of the writing process is the writing process, which it seems kind of funny that step 2 is writing, but it's a very important part of the process, as you would imagine. And so when we plan, we are writing in a certain sense, but planning is usually like point form and just jotting things down. So writing, it's sometimes it's really hard to just get started writing. So you may have heard of writer's block and people just staring at a blank piece of paper and not knowing what to do. And I think that sometimes what happens is people expect their writing to be perfect or great right away. They just want to start writing, and that's an unrealistic expectation. And another way of looking at it, to kind of flip it on its head and to look at things differently, is look at writing as a way to figure out what you want to say. So I don't know what I want to say. I'm just going to write my way through it, right? And that's a really useful strategy and a very useful mindset to have, right? So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just going to start talking and see what happens. You have that luxury. You have the time to do that. So just do it. So when you start any writing project, the most important thing is just to get ideas on the page. So that's step 1 is, do some planning. Step 2, generate some ideas. And one of the best ways we can do that is a method that well, it's not my idea, but it's called free writing. So when we free write, we set a timer. So on your phone, on your watch, whatever, just by staring at a clock, set some kind of a timer and try for 5 minutes. As you build the habit, try to go for like 10, 15, even 20, and just write. So you start the timer and you write as many words as you can before the timer runs out. And you're not allowed to stop. And you have to just let your words flow. And you have to remember, it's not about being perfect and writing complete sentences. It's about generating ideas and getting as many words down as you can. Very important to do that. So I found this on a great website. Not sure if I've conquered writer's block or if I'm writing nonsense. So sometimes you may feel that way. You may feel as though you're writing nonsense. And maybe sometimes you are, and that's totally fine. Don't worry about making sense. If you can't think of anything to write about that. Like literally say, I'm free writing for my assignment. I don't know what to write about. I'm supposed to write about an expository paragraph. I don't really know what that is, but I know it involves me explaining and describing stuff. And I don't know what to write about, but maybe I could write about my dog, or maybe I could write about a TV show I watched last night, or I don't know what to do, but I got to keep writing. And let's literally do that. Just write and write and write. Writing is like anything. It's like a muscle. It's like a habit. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And you're literally laying down new pathways in your brain, right? So if you're not used to writing, those pathways, either they aren't there or they're just not very strong. You got to make those pathways strong. And that's the way you do it. It's just by doing it. And the most important part is not stopping. You just do it and you build the habit. So step 3 is the revision process. So revising is the big picture. It's when you look at the way your writing is organized. This is the title of your paper or your essay. This is what it's about. This is your topic. This is your theme. This is how you organize it, right? It's the big picture stuff. So it's also when you take a lot of rough ideas and start to organize them in a way that makes sense, right? So you start to take all these random bits and pieces and random bits of knowledge, and you start arranging the pieces. That's revision. So in step 3 of the process, you take what you wrote in that free writing process. So take that, 100 words or 50 words or whatever you wrote in that free writing process. And then you try to find the main idea or the main theme. Or you might start to just look at like some of your, what's your best sentence? What makes the most sense? And trust me, that's a really rewarding process. You'll like go back and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I should take that idea and run with it. And then you can reorganize what you've typed, or you can rewrite the ideas into a new paragraph, right? So oftentimes the revision process, we reorganize things, we take a new approach, and then we go back to the writing process, right? So we go back to step 2 and maybe do a new free write based on our new idea, right? So my new idea is I'm going to write about my dog, and I'm going to do a free write about my dog and just write it up. And then I read that and I go, okay, the details about his fur and his behavior, that's what I'm going to focus on. And go back and do a free write and then revise it, right? So you go back and you forth and you keep polishing your ideas, you keep developing them, making them stronger. And then you go to step 4, which is the editing process. And editing is where we correct spelling mistakes, change the order of words, we cut words, we add words, we make changes to our sentences. So editing is the small picture, right? So revision is big picture, paragraphs and chapters of a book, right? But editing is like line by line, sentence by sentence, letter by letter, really fine tuning, right? So just little changes. And we become better writers by becoming better editors, right? And it's very hard to generate ideas and to edit them at the same time. And I think that's where people get in trouble, is they want to just write and have it make sense. So they've done studies on the brain. I mentioned yesterday, I love reading about the brain and psychology. And when we write, it's best to just let your mind just go and just spin off ideas and just let your mouth just go. Just start talking and just type everything you can think of about your topic. Just write it all down. Doesn't have to make sense. Doesn't have to be in the right order. Doesn't have to be spelled right. No one's going to see this except for you, right? So just, there's a part of your brain that's just loves to just generate ideas, right? There's like the left, you may have heard of left brain and right brain. So there's a part of your brain that just loves to just associate and dream up ideas and just go off on tangents and spiral out and just be random and crazy. And there's a part of your brain that's very specific and exact and logical and likes things to be a certain way, right? There's actually a great book called learning to draw using, or drawing with the left side, with the left side of the brain, right? And it's like and it's, you know, tapping into the part of your brain that likes things to be specific in a certain way. And like learning to be an artist or a painter is actually tapping into that part of your brain that loves things to be an exact and specific way. So but to be a writer, you have to tap into both sides of your brain. And so when you edit your work, I would strongly suggest that you read your rough copy out loud, either to yourself or to someone else. Make note of any mistakes or things you want to change. So bonus marks, if you want to take this to the next level, if you record yourself reading into a phone and then play it back to yourself, you will find so many mistakes and you'll find so many ways to make it better. I think that's the #1 way to edit, is just to read stuff out loud. When you read stuff, when you read words on a page, your brain will fill in the blanks. That's what your brain is good at doing. It'll fill in the blanks. Our brains love to read patterns and just fill things in. You know, if you look into the science of reading, we don't read words as letter. We actually read them as shapes. And then we actually read paragraphs and sentences the same way. Right? We are reading many words at the same time, right? That's why we can read so quickly. And that's why you can read something and then talk at the same time, because your brain is kind of like jumping ahead and it's trying to understand what's on the page. So, but when you read stuff out loud, you're forced to catch the mistakes and you're forced to slow down. So that's the key. Force yourself to slow down. You will catch mistakes. Ask someone else to read your paragraph and ask them to look for errors. So often, if you spend time on any project, you get too attached to it and you can't see the mistakes anymore. You can't understand where the mistakes are anymore because you're too close to it. You got to get someone else to read it for you, and they will find mistakes. Look up words in a dictionary or dictionary.com. Make sure you haven't misspelled anything, right? So that if you're unsure of anything, if any words, just look through your whole paragraph and just underline the ones that you're like, maybe I'm not spelling that one correctly. Sometimes you've just heard a word. You've never actually seen it written down. So if you second guess yourself, look it up. Go for a walk and think about your paragraph. Then go back and reread what you wrote and make a few more changes. So I found this one to be really useful for myself, where I write something, and this is really useful. Like if you're fed up and you want to just like slam the laptop down or just throw what you've written in the garbage and it's all terrible. I suck at this. What am I even doing? That's a good indication to me that you need to take a break and just stop. Okay. And then you just put it away, go for a walk, hang out with your kids, wash your dishes, watch hockey, do something fun or productive or whatever. Just veg out on your phone, or it doesn't matter. Just take a break from the writing. I guarantee it, when you come back and you read it again, you're going to be like, okay. If you can get a good night's sleep and come back and read that thing in the morning, it's going to be awesome, because you're going to be like, you're going to come at it with fresh, and your brain's going to be doing things behind the scenes, and you're going to come back and read this thing and be like, okay, I know what I have to do with this thing. It all makes sense now. And then step 5 is the easy part. You just send it, right? You email it to me, you talk to your DEC, right? It's done. You hit send, it's over with, right? So, now, sometimes for this one, you just need to send in your final copy, but if you do have a rough copy, I would send that in, and I would type out your rough copy and then take a picture of that, the rough copy without the edits, and then go through with a pen and then mark it up and change it, and then put notes to yourself on there. And then take that rough copy with the edits, take a picture of it, and then produce the final copy. So you're showing your work, and you're documenting the entire process, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. That is all the time we have for today's class, but I would strongly recommend you take those steps. And then maybe for the next writing assignment in this class, I will type it out and I'll actually do it live, and I'll show you my writing process. So thank you for tuning in today, and we'll get back at it tomorrow.